Welcome, everybody. I see some folks trickling in. We got a few folks coming in. I'm going to wait a few more seconds as we're at 1 o'clock so people can keep tuning in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, I'm going to go ahead and kick this off. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Distilled Spirits Council Ask the Expert webinar series. I am Ross Mulcairn, Director of Member Services and Business Development at the Distilled Spirits Council, better known as DISCUS to many of you. And welcome to our first Ask the Expert webinar of 2026. We are recording this webinar, so it'll be available on the DISCUS YouTube page and on our member portal later. So you can go ahead and check in. For those of you who are not as familiar, DISCUS is the leading voice and advocate for our members and the distilled spirits industry overall. We provide a wealth of resources and services aimed to educate the industry, including this wonderful webinar series that hopefully is valuable for all of you. And I cannot wait to have you all join us. With that housekeeping taken care of, I want to welcome the speaker for today's webinar, Building a Brand from Scratch, with Tom Moss, Chairman of Dancing Goat Distillery and the founder and former master blender of RumChata. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, today's webinar is a little bit of a special treat, everybody. We are doing a preview of a session that Tom is going to do for us at our conference in just a few short weeks. So for those of you who are registered, let this be a little treat that you're going to get the full experience in Louisville on March 4th. And for those of you who haven't registered, maybe this will be a fun little experiment, and you're going to be so excited to hear more from Tom that you're going to sign up for the conference and go ahead and get started. So, Tom, why don't we kick off? And if you want to give us just a brief background on what we're talking about next week, or not in a few weeks, and I believe the book that you've written about your experience, and then I'll ask you some questions about it.
Yeah, so the RumChata journey was really an accident. I had been asked to leave Jim Beam. Some people would say fired. I was asked to leave, and I had set myself up financially very well, so I really didn't have to get another job. I was only 49 years old, but I was like bored to tears. And I had always been involved with new product development. My history in the business was starting in sales with Jack Daniels, Brown-Forman. Then I worked in marketing for Jack Daniels, worked in marketing for Hiram Walker, which was Canadian Club, for a number of years. And then my last 16 years was with Jim Beam. And I came in as a cordial liqueur manager on De Kuyper and ended up revolving into director of bourbon worldwide for them, which is pretty cool when you're the director of the biggest bourbon in the world. And then my last job with them was vice president of sales and marketing, where I was an integration specialist for sales and marketing to our outside sales force. As a result, at Jim Beam, I had touched almost every brand they had, either from a marketing or an operations sense. When you're a liqueur and cordials person, you are very, very involved with operations because there's so much flavor development involved. And that got me to understand the reason to be involved with the guys making whiskey, for example, too, when I was working for Jim Beam. But as a result, I had all this background of flavor development expertise. And as I got bored, I started to play around with things in my kitchen. And the first thing I'd done was we had a brand at Beam called Agave Loco, which was a tequila that we put a serrano pepper in, let it sit there, and sold it with the pepper in the bottle. And it was supposed to be a shooter brand. The problem was when that serrano pepper was in the bottle for more than a month, which you can imagine it gets on the shelf, it could be there for a year. It got so hot, it basically blew your head off. So the product did not succeed. But I left there thinking, well, I think there's something with that tequila. So I got some good 100% agave tequila, and I said, well, if we take the pepper out of the bottle and just steep it in there, we can control the pepper level. And found out that Jim Beam had not re-registered the name. I got the name and I started to sell Agave Loco as a pepper-infused tequila. I had a little bit of success with that, but at the same time, I had done some research at Beam before I left with the Hispanic market. and we're trying to figure out how to get people to drink bourbon that were Hispanic. The Hispanics very, very Scotch loyal, single malt loyal, but really don't drink American whiskey and bourbon. And we had done some focus groups where we did Jim Beam and talked to them. And at the end of a focus group, you're sitting behind a mirror and there's 12 people in a room. You walk into the room and expose yourself to what you're doing, and you tell them, we're working on trying to figure out if the Hispanic consumer would like Jim Beam. And I get these comments from the participants that said, we're not whiskey drinkers, but if you figure out how to mix it with horchata, anybody in Mexico would drink it, or anybody that's Latin would drink it. And I didn't necessarily know what horchata was. And I came home and asked my son, who at the time was about 16, 17 years old, still in high school, if he knew what horchata was. And he said, yeah, Dad, we go to those burrito places. It's the jar of that white stuff on the counter. I said, what's it taste like? He said, you'll love it. It tastes like cinnamon, like rice pudding. So we went to a place, drank it, and I thought, wow, this would make a really good liqueur. This is the same time I'm doing the Agave Loco development. So I started to work on a liqueur for horchata. And the net result was I just thought the flavor was so good. Developed the flavor in my kitchen, and then actually was not thinking about selling it myself. I was thinking about selling the concept and the idea to some of the bigger liquor companies. And we had an offer on the table for a sizable sum of money and a back-end deal, and it looked really, really good. And at that time, I had been retired for about a year, and my wife said, you got to do this yourself. Everybody loves it. We would test people as they came in to play cards at our house or whatever. And she said, you've got to do this. Everybody loves it. And I tell everybody, I think she was trying to get me out of the house, give me a job so I could leave. But it was the smartest thing in the world, because the product did have some really good legs to it. And it became just an explosion after that. Not an easy explosion, but it taught me a lot about how to verbalize. When a lot of people said, how did you make RumChata happen? I really look back at it, and I wrote a book that's coming out in March called Tastes Like Money. And it basically details the journey, which was about a 10 to 12-year-old journey with the brand, and ultimately a sale of it. But it was a journey from an idea in the kitchen that became one of the top 5 liqueurs in the United States. So that's kind of the nutshell. And the book details that, and the seminar in Louisville will kind of go through the steps of it and a little more detail of what we accomplished.
Absolutely. And that's, as I was about to tell everyone, it's the book will be with us in Louisville. I have read a bit of it myself. I'm a big fan. So Tom, great job on that. And so one, there's a book of the story, and then we're having the full conversation in Louisville. So before I get started, I just want to let everyone in the audience know, if you have any specific questions you wanted to ask about building a brand, how you get it from here to there, what Tom's journey has learned, we have a chat and a Q&A function here on the webinar. Feel free to go ahead and put your questions in there, and we'll work them in wherever we can. We got 30 minutes today, so we'd like to make sure that this is as relevant to everyone in the audience as we can. But Tom, as I sort of picked through the book a little bit and hearing you tell that story, one of the things that I noticed is that you have touched a lot of the different elements of the industry. You talked about how when you were in the cordial and liqueur space, you were working with the whiskey guys, you were working with the flavors. If someone like you says they want to sort of strike out on their own a little bit, or maybe someone who has a smart ally like your wife and tells you to sort of do it yourself, what would you say has been the part of your career that you think has been the most impactful in your ability to take, I made this great thing in my kitchen, and now it's one of the top selling brands in the country?
I think the thing that you really have to realize is we always used to talk about this. The biggest 3 feet of product success are getting it to move from the shelf into the shopper's cart. And you have to understand, why would a consumer buy this product you're trying to sell? And I tell this to a lot of people. Consumption of a product, long-term brand loyalty, is basically a habit. You have brands that consumers drink, they buy them by habit. It can be a liquor brand, it can be a soft drink, it can be a bread brand, whatever it may be. A consumer has a buying habit. They just get in the habit. They go in the store. They buy the same thing. They buy the same thing. And if you want to succeed, you need to understand what that habit is. And in the case of RumChata, I tell people we didn't have to change a habit. We created a habit because it was something they had never had before, and it was add on to what they were drinking. They liked the flavor of RumChata, and they added it into their drink repertoire. On the other side, I will tell you a story that I didn't tell in the book, but it basically is interesting. When I was with Jim Beam, we had the license to sell Starbucks coffee liqueur, and we thought it was going to be an absolute home run. Starbucks in a coffee liqueur, the product was outstanding. It had that really heavy, bold coffee flavor that Starbucks was known for. We brought it out, got a ton of distribution, and the consumers just yawned. They didn't really just they weren't looking to just sit there and buy Starbucks coffee liqueur, you know. And as I thought about it, I thought, well, yeah, you know, the biggest coffee liqueur brand at the time, which still is Kahlua, and they were very happy with Kahlua. They were very habitually buying Kahlua. Why would they buy Starbucks, no matter how good the name was? And that's when it really dawned on me that the biggest key to success of any new product is you have to understand why would a consumer buy it, and you have to figure out how your brand can fit into their habit. And then you have to be very, very patient, because if you're breaking a habit, it's not going to happen the first time. It's not going to happen the second time. So I would say that's the most important thing that I learned and that I used with the RumChata brand.
That's amazing. I love that idea of, rather than breaking a habit, you're creating a whole new habit. You are creating your own sort of vertical in this space, that it's a brand new idea. Is there something that you think, besides, I guess, obviously the quality of the product, that you talked about your Agave Loco experience, your experience with sort of building up other brands and them not succeeding? Is there anything special, I guess, maybe besides the just creating a new habit, that led this one to be such a success? Or is it just that this was the best product you made and this was the one that took off?
Well, I think the key on this part is the second part of a product success story is you have to have a product that's the best it can be. It has to be so good in a bottle that nobody can say, "Oh, this doesn't taste good." You know, and that confidence that you have that the best product is in the bottle, and that was where when we developed RumChata, we had really good flavor people working on it. But I was lucky enough to have my father involved in the business at the time. He was a very, very good production guy, and I never had to worry about quality control, what was in the bottle. And if you have that confidence that what is in the bottle is the best that anybody could buy, it gives you the confidence internally to have a tremendous passion to sell your product, because you're selling your product 24/7. It becomes part of your life, and you can't be successful by yawning and say, "Here's my product, you know, see you later," you know. And we were lucky enough that we had a product that really resonated with the consumer from the first sip. Many times, if you're selling a whiskey or a vodka or something else, that's where you're breaking a habit. You got to figure out what are they drinking now, and why would they drink my product? Where liqueur is a little bit different, because it's usually a flavor that they're not drinking, and you're just trying to get them to understand that this is new and unique, and would you put it into your drink repertoire? So,
Yeah, that's fantastic. Now, one of the things that I found interesting in your background and your experience is that, as you said, you were in the industry for a long time. You got to touch a lot of different companies and learn a lot of things. You talked about your father as a quality control. Is there anything, I mean, the spirits industry is very well connected and relatively insular. If we have someone on this call who's thinking about starting their own brand, who has not had the same depth and breadth of experience that you have had, is there something that you would recommend, or could you say someone who sort of doesn't come from the spirits industry could break in and create a brand like this?
you know, it's interesting. Somebody asked me if I didn't have the experience I had, could you be successful in the business? And I will say yes. You don't need to have the experience. And I'll give you an example. There's a brand that came out of Wisconsin. It's a ready-to-drink called Carbless. And Carbless is basically a ready-to-drink product that has no carbs. And they're selling the whole concept of no carbs. And the people that started it were not in the business at all. It was a husband and wife team. They started it from scratch and have become very successful. And the key is, once again, good product in the bottle, in the can, and it's a concept that people can understand. And they got behind it, and they're doing very, very well. I think the key is any new product, you've got to focus on a consumer. Why would they buy it? And will they buy it at the price you want to sell it for? And then everything else you can pretty much find sources to make the product. The internet's phenomenal in what you can do. I've got whiskey, I got a bottle, give me some bottlers, that type of thing. But the key then is you've got to get involved with quality producers. Don't go to the cheapest people. Go to a quality producer that has good references, long-term longevity. You can taste some of the products they're making, or is it good? Because your reputation is in that bottle or can or whatever you're selling. And if you can justify that it's the best it can be, you don't have to make it yourself. We made it ourselves because my father had tremendous background in the liquor business, and he said if you're going to make a cream, the most important part of a cream is you have to clean your equipment out, because when you bottle vodka, gin, etc., you can run steam through your line. I don't know if how many people on the call have seen a bottling line, but there's all sorts of hoses and pipes and nooks and crannies that if you're selling whiskey or vodka or whatever, you clean it out with steam, everything comes out because the alcohol is a solvent that's already in there. If you produce a cream like that, all that butterfat gets caught in all the little nooks and crannies and cause tremendous product quality problems. So that's why my dad said, we got to do this ourselves. If we're putting all our money in behind it, we've got to make sure the quality is pristine. It would have been a lot easier for us to just outsource that and not put the investment up, but it was the best thing long term for us to do because the product quality was bar none. So.
I love it. And hey, if anyone on here is if they just take away one thing, let it be that, with a cream-based liqueur, make sure you're cleaning your nooks and crannies properly, because it's not going to be the same as the steam. That's a good little tip that, I probably wouldn't have thought of.
It's funny because we had a bottling company that we became the largest cream producer in the United States, alcoholic cream producer in the United States. So we had a lot of people coming to us, and we had some excess capacity. And as long as it didn't compete with RumChata, we would bottle other creams for other people. And our pricing was our pricing. We weren't gouging people. It was just what it was. And this one company had developed an iced coffee cream that they were selling. And they had gotten into some retailers, and they were doing about 30 or 40,000 cases, which are really, really good number. And they decided that our price could be bettered by going to another supplier. So they pulled everything out, went to the other supplier. We said, hey, that's fine. That other supplier called us about 3 months later and said, how do you bottle this stuff? We've never done creams before. And I'm thinking to myself, they saved a couple of pennies a case, and they went to somebody that's putting bad product in a bottle. And it was unfortunate for them. That product is no longer available because they had quality problems that led them to go to a cheaper route, and it ended up the brand died. So
that's terrible. Well, but it's an important lesson, that with all of the marketing and the sales, and as you said, the most important 3 feet is from the shelf to the shopper's basket. What's going into that bottle is really king. And if making sure that you have a quality product.
Yeah, and if the consumer, if you have confidence and your product is the best it can be, the consumer is going to know that, because every bottle they buy is going to be great. And if it's a good product, they'll keep buying it. So,
that's a nice lesson, that if you make a good product and you get them to pick it up once, they'll do it. I don't
want to make the thing say if you got the best product in the world and you figure out a consumer, you got the world, the solution to world peace, right? There's still a tremendous amount of work that has to be done, and your distribution system is one of the keys. It's unfortunately, in our business, we've had a lot of consolidation where a lot of the smaller distributors have gone out of business, and it's controlled by the really large distributors. And those large distributors have probably 10,000 brands to sell. There's brands and SKUs, and it's just so hard to get any recognition anymore. It's got to be done by the product being so unique and something that people would really want to buy. But you've got to really think your distribution system out. and not just go with the biggest distributor. You've got to say, will this person be able to service the market for my brand? And that might be a distributor that only covers 10% of a market, but at least it gives you an opportunity to get the product in and into retail with some velocity, you know.
Of course. And we actually just got a question come in from someone tuning in that said, once you've, done all this research and you got out of your kitchen and your product is ready for the shelf, how did you come up with your go-to-market strategy to promote it as a brand new brand, as that sort of creation of a habit, as you say, rather than breaking someone of an old
Yeah,
habit?
so I have it's interesting story about rum chata when because it was horchata based, and I thought people a lot of Mexican food is very very popular. Our original strategy on rum chata was to go to Mexican restaurants because if you go to an Italian restaurant, after dinner drinks are sambuca, amaretto, limoncello, etc. You go to a Mexican restaurant, there's really not an after dinner drink. You drink margaritas before, but are you going to drink them after? You'll drink coffee, maybe Mexican coffee, but we thought the rum chata brand would be a phenomenal opportunity for a Mexican restaurant because, the reason people, the Hispanics drink horchata is because the way the product is produced, it's a base and it absorbs all the acid when you drink it. So when they drink all this hot food, which is created by acid, the base cools the stomach down. And that's why so much horchata is consumed by a Hispanic consumer. So we thought this was a natural for Mexican restaurants. My wife, who used to work for Gallo, and I went and just knocked on doors, went into Mexican restaurants. They loved the product, but they said, rum chata, this isn't authentic. We don't mix horchata with rum. So our grand scheme of using Mexican restaurants to seed the product did not work, and they wouldn't take the product. Maybe one or two would here and there, but it was so our strategy off the top was flawed. Well, as an entrepreneur, you've got to say, now what do I do? So at that point, I went out and started selling rum chata because I had 900 cases in the back room. They're already made. I had to go out with the distributor salesman and sell it into bars and stores. And people loved the taste. So it was a matter of, can I get it into the stores? At that time, all the cream liqueurs tasted like Irish cream. The store sets all were brown bottles with Irish cream. Nobody had come up with a new flavored cream. And one bar I walked into was the guy looked like a biker. He had a denim vest on with Devil's Disciples on the back. He was about 50 years old, long grayish black-haired ponytail. And I was like, this guy's not going to like my Irish my rum chata cream. So I stood on the side and the salesman sold him beer and whatever he was buying. And the guy said, what's that guy here for? And he said, well, he's got a new product. He said, can you let me taste it? And I said, okay, you want to taste it? Go ahead. He tasted, took a drink of it. And he goes, hey, that tastes like Cinnamon Toast Crunch, like the milk in the bowl of a Cinnamon Toast Crunch. And I never heard that before because I was a cereal guy growing up, but Cinnamon Toast Crunch was not around when I was eating cereal. And I never had Cinnamon Toast Crunch. So after that day, I went out and bought a box of Cinnamon Toast Crunch, made it, tasted the milk, and I'm like, he's absolutely right. This is the taste like Cinnamon Toast Crunch. So I went online with Amazon and I bought these little cartons of sampler packs of cereal, the ones with the foil tops, and you put it's a plastic cup. And if a bar bought 2 bottles of rum chata, I gave them a box or a little bowl of these Cinnamon Toast Crunch and said, sell this as Cinnamon Toast Crunch, put a little piece of Cinnamon Toast Crunch on top of the shot. And the thing took off because you had all these people that were 25 to 35 that grew up eating Cinnamon Toast Crunch and the flavor resonated with them. So my great strategy of Mexican restaurants didn't work off the thing and I had to adjust. And when I found out that the Cinnamon Toast Crunch could be a way to sell the product, we merged into that being our key strategy. But our biggest thing with the brand was we created a line. We called it Rum Chata is the best tasting cream liqueur ever. It just the flavor was something people loved, and we just said we worked on the flavor. Flavor was the strategy. How can we get it in people's mouths? Because we get it in people's mouths, people like it, and they create their own habit of wanting to buy it again. So
That's amazing. And, as you talk about sort of how great the product is and you come up with this recipe of, this is the great flavor and it's the best tasting cream liqueur ever. Forgive me if I'm giving away a bit of a secret later on in the book. I encourage people to buy it because I think it's incredible. But there is a bit that I would hope you could walk out for me a little bit, that there is a PSA ad campaign about how rum chata was a problem to purchase because if you bring it to a party, you're leaving with an empty bottle. And, we want to warn people, don't bring RumChata to a party if you want to come home with your own because everyone's going to like it so much, you're never getting any back. Where did that sort of campaign come from? Was that a original idea of yours?
The biggest problem we had when we started up was we couldn't get financing to buy our raw materials. At the time, 2008, 9, 10, the banking crisis was in and nobody was loaning money to anybody. And we basically ran out of money. And because it was being financed by my IRA and my father's IRA. And we ran out of money. And we would get orders for 100,000 cases of RumChata and only have enough raw materials to make 15,000. So we had to allocate the product, and because it was going so fast. So what would happen is we'd walk into a store and we'd see empty shelves and what are we going to do? And then we talked to some consumers. You'd be standing. I always would like to go into a bar or a store, and if I see somebody buy my product, I like to talk to them. Why did you buy RumChata? That was the first time you drank it. We also did it on Facebook. Facebook was huge for me as a marketer because you're talking to consumers, real consumers, and they're giving you, they're posting their thoughts. And what happened was on Facebook, these women used to have bunco parties where bunco is a dice game that suburban women love to play. And they would bring bottles of wine to the party. And one of the people said, I'm never bringing RumChata to my party again because I brought my RumChata bottle and I came home and I had an empty bottle. And I thought that was such a fun thing. So we decided we printed a shelf talker that was like a warning label, which we have on our website. There's a website, by the way, called taste-light-money.com, which kind of previews the book. And you'll see a picture of that warning label. And the warning label looked like a street warning label with the cross edge, bright yellow and black. And it says, warning, if you bring a bottle of RumChata to a party, you will go home with an empty bottle. And we found out that people were stealing the necker tags. They thought it was so cute. So then we thought, well, this probably would be fun as a radio ad. So one of my sons was in production with Leo Burnett at ad agency, and we were able to produce a radio ad. And it was actually my wife and I, and my son did the mandatory at the end where the RumChata 335, the one where you do the speed talking to get the mandatory stuff out. But we made it sound like a PSA where it's like, warning, there have been reports of bottles missing, etc. And that was the first paid advertising we really did, and it was relatively cheap to do. But those are the types of things we did to try and, when we learned something from Facebook on how consumers were using our products, we wanted to put it in an ad because we thought if that's impacting somebody on Facebook, it's probably impacting some other people. And that helped really propel the brand too. So
if one person is experiencing this and wants to share it with you, chances are there's at least one other person who's had that same idea and just chose not to share it.
And the other thing that really was good about Facebook is people were posting pictures of how they were using RumChata, recipes, ads, recipes and photos, etc. And one of my other sons was a mixologist and was our corporate mixologist. And he actually created a recipe book called 101 Uses for RumChata, which we wanted to get the recipes out there because the more ways people could use it, whether it be in food, hot chocolate, any way they could use it, it just makes the brand much more accessible to people and much more ubiquitous for consumption.
Absolutely. Now, your point about taking feedback, and we're coming up on time, so I'm going to steal one last question from the chat, and I want to thank everyone for being here. But you mentioned getting the feedback from Facebook and using that in your advertising, and we have a question that someone is asking: when you're talking about the actual product development, how much testing were you doing sort of before you served it to anybody, and how much recipe development were you doing before you launch, or do you put something out and then to a small group and then maybe pivot the recipe based on the feedback from that group outside of just the people who are sort of in the original development team?
Yeah, so I've been involved so much with flavor development. I've been involved where you research the hell out of it. And what I found with paid research is many times your product becomes more vanilla. It starts to have great nuances and somebody likes it, somebody doesn't. So you change this, change that, and it becomes kind of bland and plain in the middle. my feeling with research is you have to understand what you want the product to taste like. If you are passionate about what it is, I knew I wanted this to taste like the best horchata you could get. I didn't want to have any liquor taste behind it. So we balanced it off with light rum and made it taste. We just did blind tastings with ourselves and our friends. How does this taste versus this horchata? And we came up with what we thought was a great formula. And we could have researched it again, but I think we would have changed it and it would have made it more bland. It would have, we knew what we wanted, and we were very confident that that was the way to go with it. And you have to have people that you trust that would be in the target group. If I was selling this to 70-year-old grandmothers, then I better taste it with 70-year-old grandmothers. If I'm trying to taste it with 25-year-old legal drinking age adults, I should taste it with them and just say, what do you think? And just take that feedback. And you don't have to do a tasting of 100 people, because as I said, that can make it that can really just sterilize it to make it so it doesn't have the nuances that it had when you started.
I totally understand.
And I tell this to other people. I say, if research was the way to make a new product, all the really, really profitable companies would be the winners. But what happens is new products come out of people like me that develop them and then sell them to the big companies. Because the big companies, and I work for the big companies, you research the hell out of stuff, and it takes the original nuance of the product away. And I think it's very important to understand, trust your gut. If you really know what you're trying to do and trying to accomplish, and you do that, and you're comfortable that what you're putting in that bottle is exactly what you want, you have a real good chance of being successful.
I love it. That's a fantastic sort of final pitch of, if you're trying to make a product, make sure that it is something that you believe in, that you have the confidence in, and that you know what you're selling, because you're going to know your product better than anyone else. And then when you need the next steps, you can come to our conference and hear the full version of Tom's chat, and then you can buy his book and learn even more, and then you'll be all set to go, and you'll have the next RumChata, right?
Very good. Very good. Yeah.
All right. I want to thank everyone for being in here. We have a couple links in the chat to our conference registration if you're interested in coming to join us in Louisville, March 3rd through 5th. The link to Tom's website if you are interested in seeing those warning labels before you get a chance to get your hands on that book. And I just want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank Tom for your time, everyone who's tuned in. If you have any questions, please reach out to us, membership@distilledspirits.org. We'd be happy to help you out with any other questions you have. We have a lot of members that have had success, that have had resources for new brands that are hoping to join us. And other than that, I will say thank you to everyone who's here, and I will see you guys all for our next Ask the Expert coming up on future Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. Good to see everybody. Thank you.
Thank you all.